Patsy K.
Patty K, yeah, and
All
its
right.
tag is actually at crimsonclovers.com.
Okay. All right. Hey guys, how you doing tonight? Tony here, and welcome to another show. I am here tonight with Miss Cay Miner, and Kay and I connected on TikTok maybe a couple of weeks ago. And let me see, it says my Facebook broadcast has stopped. We're still live on YouTube. I'll go ahead and work that out. But Kay and I connected on TikTok, and I actually heard her story, and she can actually tell a little bit more about herself. But Kay, welcome to the show, and go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our listeners, our viewers, a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, my name is Cay Miner. I am happily married with two grown sons. We're actually expecting our first grandson, our first grandchild, period, in August. But my platform on TikTok is mental health advocate. I've suffered tremendous losses throughout my life and didn't probably get the help that I needed. So once I did, I realized that I had done myself an injustice by not getting it to begin with. So I am just trying to reach out to let anybody that's suffering in silence come, to me. They can message me on TikTok, Facebook, wherever they want to, and I'm going to try and help them get through it.
Well, that's great. Now, again, what caught my attention was the fact I think we were in another broadcast actually, and you followed me or I followed you, and then I went and I checked out your profile, and that's what I saw, that you were a mental health advocate. And so that being said, I'm a pastor here in Georgia, and that's one of the things that I take very seriously is addressing some of those issues as much as I can, spirit in the spiritual aspects of it. But I've also mentioned that there is a necessity. There should be a necessity for spiritual leaders, pastors, whatever, to have some kind of professional connection. And that being said, and I think I may have asked you this earlier, do you have some kind of professional background as it relates to mental health, or is this something you basically just taken on yourself because of what you went through?
Well, I am a retired RN, so I did have a background in mental health.
Yeah, okay.
And also, my father suffered from mental health issues my entire life. So I was close to it in that way as well. But
Okay.
as I tell my story, it will make more sense as to why I'm so passionate and adamant about people being in the right mindset and getting help.
Okay. And like I said, we kind of talked a little bit off camera, but how did the fact that you suffered the loss of a loved one, how did that impact you emotionally, mentally?
Well, the first loss I suffered was my grandfather's.
Okay.
He died in January of 1990, and that was really the first loss I'd ever been through. And looking back on it, I know how depressed I was at the time, but I thought that I could handle it on my own.
Mhm.
And we moved forward a little bit to August of 1990. I unexpectedly lost my mother. Looking back now, I went into a deep depression at that time. But being a nurse, I thought I could get myself through it. And that was the worst mistake I could have made.
So, and I know being a nurse, my wife is a nurse. She's worked in doctor's offices, hospitals, and you see a lot of tragedy, when it comes to the nursing fields. And sometimes, and I don't know, I haven't experienced it, but I imagine sometimes you get kind of detached from it because in some instances, if you don't, then it kind of hampers your job. I used to work. I used to work at a hospital as a security guard, and I would see a lot of stuff. And then it would amaze me how, let's say, a nurse loses a patient. They have to do and they have to be professional, but sometimes, of course, you can probably attest to this. You have to move on to the next patient,
That's
and you
right.
have to be able to process all of that. And I don't know how you can face that almost on a daily basis and continue to move on. But then when it happens to you, there has to be some type of outlet. So what was your experiences as a nurse? And I know you can't go into details, but
Mhm.
how did that impact your life?
Well, Tony, when my grandfather was ill, I was already taking classes. Wasn't really sure what my path was going to be as far as a career, but I helped take care of him, and I knew if I took care of him, I could take care of anybody,
Mhm.
you know. And that was when my passion for helping others really bloomed. But I tell you, I have seen way too much tragedy as a nurse. But I they always, every death affected me. Yes, you have to move on to your next patient, like you said, but I would get off work, and when I lost a patient, come home and I would cry, and my husband said, if you're going to do this when you lose patients, in your profession, you need to not do it. And I told him, no, if it ever didn't affect me, that's when I would stop being a nurse.
Uh, uh. So with your father's, and I mean, any family member, I guess, especially if you're close to them. And I'll just give you a backstory for me. Um, I did a message maybe last week, maybe a couple of weeks ago, talking about PTSD. And normally, when people think of PTSD, they think of military, combat soldiers, they think of police officers. But there are people, and not to dismiss any of the things they go through, but there are people on a daily basis that go through things that are traumatic, and it has an impact on them. And I can say, as I mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, one of the most traumatic events for me was as a 10-year-old boy losing my little brother. He was 6 at the time. I was 10. And I can remember the day that he went to the hospital on a Tuesday. And by that Friday, he was gone. But in that time frame, of course, and you're a person of faith as well. I think you mentioned that. In that time frame, I'm believing that my brother is going to be all right, because I was very in tune with some of the things that were going on. Listen, didn't talk a whole lot, but I would listen. And I can remember when my brother passed, it was like my whole world just crumbled. This is as a 10-year-old. And I can remember wanting answers, but couldn't get answers, because more likely than not, now things may be a little different now, and I don't blame my parents or anybody else at that time, but normally people don't take the time to talk to or console the children, because sometimes children, you seem more resilient, of course. And for me and my sister at the time, I can't remember anybody coming in and sitting down and talking to us. Now they said everything's going to be all right, but they spent more time with my mom and my dad than they did with me and my sister. So for me, that impacted me to the point I can remember as a 10-year-old, when the family members were coming over before the funeral, they were trying to support mom and dad and everything. And I can remember, of course, they're trying to make life go on and laugh. And I can remember as a 10-year-old wanting everybody to get out of the house. There was nothing funny to me, get out of the house, because my baby brother just passed, and wanting to scream and tell everybody to get out of the house. And it impacted me to the point now, even as a pastor, unless if somebody passes in their family, I rarely go running over to the house unless they request me. Unless they ask for some help or they want to see me, I'll call and check on them, and I did not realize how much that event as a child impacted me until maybe about 5 years ago.
Really?
I was like, wow. So PTSD is real.
PTSD is very real. And my father decided to take his own life with me outside of his house.
Wow.
And I heard, a shot. So I ran back into the house and
And how
immediately
old were
called.
you at this time?
I was 30. No, I was 38 or 39 when it happened.
Okay.
No, I'll take that back. I was 42, because our
Okay.
youngest was 10. I was 42.
Okay.
And I called 911, and I ran back to his bedroom and immediately started doing CPR on him until the paramedics got there. And I was not able to save him.
Mm.
And PTSD, I had never suffered from it before, but boy, did it come on then. It was horrible. And, you mentioned you as a child not being talked to. That was something that my husband and I had to explain to our two children.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were 10 and 14. But we made it a point to set them down and talk to them about it.
Hmm.
But,
Yeah.
Tony, even when my father did that, not only was I suffering from PTSD, I was depressed and I had a tremendous amount of anxiety, panic attacks. But I still, in my mind, said, "Oh, you're an RN. You can get through this." And
Yeah.
worst thing I could have done, you know. So I waited 4 long years
I was
before I
going to ask
finally.
you. I was going to ask you how long was it before you actually got some help?
4 years, Tony, and those were 4 years that I was present in my home, but I was not present for my husband and my boys.
Mm.
And I can't get those 4 years back. But him taking my husband one day, I just began crying unconsolably. I
Yeah.
couldn't stop. So we went to a therapist, and the therapist said, "We can't help her. She needs to go to a doctor." So that's what we did. And it was the best decision I could have ever made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely turned my life around.
Now, as for me, I can only speak for myself as a pastor, as a husband, somebody that grew up in the church. I have always believed that in prayer, I believed in the power of prayer. But at the same time, I've learned that there are some things you need to get professional help for.
Right.
I encourage the people where I serve. I say, there's only so much I can help you with. There's some things that I have knowledge of, but I don't have an expertise in. I'm not going to pretend to have an expertise. So we're going to pray for you, but we're going to also try to get you some help. And
Right.
so, with that being said, you being an RN, uh, and you knowing that sometimes there's people need that professional help, what are some of the things that you can help people navigate through?
Oh, you name it. And my father's um, death wasn't the only one that I had to suffer through those circumstances with. And I can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just let them know that they can reach out to me, but I'm not, I can pray for them. I can pray with them. I'm a very, very strong believer in our Lord and Savior. And I know my faith is unbreakable. If not for my faith, I don't know how I would have gotten through the 4 years before I got help.
Yeah.
But I try to lead them in the right direction, Tony. And another thing that I've learned through this journey is you have to keep checking on people, that are having a hard time. And a lot of the time, the people that say they're okay, they're not. They're really not. You know, my brother did the same thing. He
Well,
ended his own life.
well, let me ask you this question. This kind of off topic. Well, it could kind of fit. What kind of person was your dad and your brother? Were they happy people? Were they, would you have seen that coming?
No. Now maybe more so a little bit from my father,
Mm.
but never from my brother.
Okay.
No.
So
Um,
sometimes there aren't any warning signs.
mm-mm. And there were really none with my father, other than he had gotten diagnosed with multiple comorbidities in the hospital the week prior to him taking his own
Okay.
life
Okay.
that were going to take away his independence.
Okay.
But I can show you emails that I got from my brother the week that he took his life.
Yeah.
And he was in one of the best places he had ever been, expecting his first child. I mean, everything was going wonderful for him and always upbeat.
Yeah, it's kind of odd how that happens sometimes with people. My wife and I, we passed a restaurant the other day, and Anthony Bourdain's name was on there. I don't know if you know Anthony Bourdain, the guy that
Yes.
was, the chef and travel expert. You would think he had the world in his hand, and so many others. Who comedians. You know, and you don't see that kind of stuff happen.
You're right.
And you mentioned when you first started, You don't want people to suffer in silence. That is one of the things I encourage the people where I serve. Do not suffer in silence. Don't be ashamed to let somebody know that you need help.
Right.
And sometimes we can give that stigma. We can place that stigma on people, like something's wrong with it. To me, I see now that mental health is just like any other kind of condition that you need professional help with.
Right. And, not only do I point them to professionals, but, you know, and you're a professional in what you do. I often tell them if they don't have a friend, family member, if they don't, want to reach out and get help from a doctor that way, to get in touch with their clergyman and to talk to their clergyman, talk to their pastor or their priest or whatever. Just they can't keep suffering in silence because, Tony, before I leave this earth, I want to get mental illness, the taboo, removed. I
Yeah,
don't want it to be stigmatized like it is now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's something I'm extremely passionate about.
yeah. No longer can you make jokes, and I'm going to just use this term, and please excuse me. You
Oh,
can't just use terms like we used to, or he's just crazy.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
because you never know. You
right,
never know.
right,
His elevator doesn't go all the way to the top.
right.
You never know. So I am a lot more careful than because again, not intending to hurt anybody's feelings or being crude or anything, but that's just something we grew up saying.
Exactly. We did too.
Yeah,
Did too.
yeah,
So, you're not alone.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, and even my father with the mental health problems he had his entire life, if someone did something he thought was, you know, off balance, he would say they're just crazy.
yeah, yeah,
Himself,
yeah, yeah.
so no,
Well,
it's
that being said, what you said your father just said, and of course you can't answer this question, but you never saw that coming from him. Would you have thought that he would have, you know, thought of himself as being someone that would take his own life? Because me personally, I'll just say that's something I would never do.
I
But at the
kn-
same time, and I can't see myself doing it again. No
mhm.
disrespect to anybody, but at the same time, I imagine some of the same people who have, taken their lives, possibly said the same things.
No, I wouldn't have, Tony. I wouldn't have. He it like right after he took his life, we of course had to go meet with his attorney. His attorney had no idea
Yeah,
that he had suffered from mental illness,
yeah.
and he had been his attorney for 40, 50 years. So no, it's not something I ever would have seen him doing.
Okay.
That's why, and the thing that got me worse than anything is he knew no matter what happened, he had me there for a reason, to take care of him, and I would try and save him no matter what. And that really made it even more difficult for me to understand. you
Well,
know
I would say, and this is just me, possibly speaking out of my ignorance. I don't know, no ill intent intended, but I think the taking of your own life is the ultimate sign of that's the extreme when it comes to mental health or mental health challenges or mental health issues. I think that's the extreme. Out of my ignorance, I don't know. That's to me
no,
that would be the extreme. But then at the same time, there are other aspects of mental health issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, and the list goes on,
mhm.
that people face every day. And although they may not take their lives, they don't live a, a quality life if they never get help.
No, not at all, not at all. I really bonded with a patient. He was a young male, not even 20, but a diagnosed schizophrenic. And it was evident that he had that. And, the other nurses were scared to go see him. This has been years ago, but still, I wanted to help him because he did know he had a problem. He did get help. And he probably would have harmed himself before he would have harmed anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up passing from natural. He had heart problems as well, but you just see there again, even the nurses were wanting to stay away from him, you know. So he more or
Was he
less,
was he violent?
no,
Was
no,
it?
not once. And you know, they treated him though like he was an outcast.
Oh, okay. I got you. I got you. I
You know
got you.
what I mean? And it was horrible.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've I've seen that side of it as well. Um, with that being said, and there's so much more to the mental health issues and challenges that people have. And again, as I mentioned, I don't have any kind of expertise in that. Let me just say this. I just thought about this. I remember when I worked in a group home for children.
Hmm.
And these are children who, of course, been taken from their parents. And I was like a house parent. My first time working in that type of environment and being brought up in a very a strict family where, you obeyed the parent. You never used profanity in the house. If you did, you find yourself getting up off the ground. I went to this facility to work with these kids, and then when the kids would what we call they would act out,
Hmm.
as a person that comes from a very strict background where children had respect, I would get angry. I'm thinking to myself again because I was younger then, didn't have any knowledge of this kind of stuff, but I
Hmm.
would get angry. I think he just needs a good spanking. But
Hmm.
then you go after you get them calmed down, you put them in the behavioral health room. That's what we called it. Then you go and read their stories, read their charts, and you see these are children that have been abused. It didn't dawn on me at that time. Within a couple of weeks, I really figured it out.
Right.
But initially, it was like, this is crazy. Then crazy, excuse the term.
That's okay. I know what
and,
you mean.
and and I'm sitting here, and then I start reading their chart, and then you see the level of abuse, or you see um, these particular parents have basically left the child with grandparent. It's all kinds of stories, and you're trying to figure out. I'm trying to manage all of this, and then I said, I see now why they behave like they behave. You can't go into some of these facilities thinking it's like it is when you grew up. That was
Right.
the thing that I had to realize. This isn't the family structure that you have. This is totally different. That's why they're in this facility. So that gave me a lot more empathy. But I realized after a short period of time, I can't do this. this I take my hat off. I applaud anybody that can work in those type of facilities and still give respect and quality care. I'm
Well,
just not cut out for that.
you know, I remember going through those facilities as a nursing student, and one thing sticks out in particular. But it was a young boy, and he started acting out like you said, and they would take him down.
Yeah,
They took him down, and which that absolutely broke my heart. And then put him in a safe room,
yeah, safe room.
and got to reading his chart, and he had no one to support him.
Yeah,
So, there was definitely a reason he acted out. And thankfully, he was in the right place to get the proper care that he needed.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, for me, I've come to realize, a lot of times when you see that something triggers it, there's a root cause. It's not always, as far as the Christian community is concerned, it's not always demonic. Sometimes it may be a chemical imbalance.
right.
Sometimes it may be a particular trauma that we may not know anything about. We have to
Exactly.
learn how to deal with it. So that being said, what could somebody, or what's some advice that you might give somebody who may be facing some type of mental health challenge? And since you do have some kind of experience with it.
Well, first and foremost, as a nurse, I would want to see them get professional help. But what I'll say is tell someone, a friend, a family member. You cannot keep it just bottled up inside of you because it's just going to escalate and escalate and escalate like mine did. I hid it from my husband and my boys. I would cry all day long. And when they came home, I turned it off,
Mm,
until one day I couldn't do it anymore. So, speak out. I mean, speak to a friend, speak to, like I said, your clergyman. or get professional help. There are also groups that get together, to offer mental health support to each other. So that would also be a good avenue for someone to take.
Okay. I don't want to mess up your thought process here. I don't want to throw you off, but I was thinking as you were talking, did you not get help because you were embarrassed? Because I know you said you didn't think you thought you could handle it, but
Mhm.
was there were you embarrassed to get help to
No,
admit you needed help? Okay.
I wasn't embarrassed, Tony. I was hard headed.
All right.
And I thought, I'm a medical
Okay.
professional. I know exactly what I need to do for, the way that I'm feeling, the PTSD. It was just me being hard headed.
Being hard headed. Yeah.
Because you know what? People can call me crazy all day long for getting the help that I needed, but I'm
Yeah.
still here and living a happy life because I did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's
So if
great.
they call me crazy, that's on them.
Yeah. Kay, I do appreciate you. And let me just, for those that are listening, those that may, have some type of, well, you may have some questions for Kay herself. Now, let me say your TikTok or your Instagram, I can't remember. What is your handle on TikTok? What is your TikTok handle?
At
Um,
TikTok, it's at crimsonclovers.com.
crimsonclovers.com.
Yes.
Okay. I'll put that in the description. If you would like, how would you like people to contact you through email or?
They can contact me through email as well if
Okay,
they need to.
okay. What's your email?
It's K with a C, CAYWIESE at yahoo.com.
That's right. The email you got me. What I'll do, I'll actually put that information in the description below the video, and also I'll put your TikTok handle. You're there. She's the mental health advocate, willing to help you. She wants to be a listening ear, possibly a shoulder to cry on. Kay, go ahead and give us some final thoughts.
I just, I've got, as you know, Tony, I'm now doing lives on TikTok that strictly focus on mental health advocacy. And so many people have reached out to me on TikTok and messaged me. This is a problem that needs to be brought to the forefront. What I'm talking about is not mental health being a problem, mental health being taboo, or mental health being a stigma. We've got to get that erased. Your mental health has a lot to do, it can affect your physical health, it can affect every aspect of your life. So it's got to be made a top priority. And it's okay, Tony, for someone to say they're not okay.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, it's okay to not be okay, but just reach out. Don't suffer like I did and do nothing about it for 4 long years, not even for a month, a week. You know when you need the help.
Yeah,
And if they don't want to reach out to a professional, they can reach out to me and I'll try and guide them. You know, it's been horrible, but this weekend I had a dear friend who lost someone very close to them through suicide. And she did not know how to deal with it, and she didn't know what she needed to tell her children.
yeah,
And we just sat down and had a long talk, and I told her, you've got to be honest with them first and foremost.
yeah,
It's going to be a hard conversation, but do that. And she has thanked me a million times over. She said that was the best advice she could have gotten. But it was something that she dreaded,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it helped.
Yeah, as you said that, I'm going to also, because I didn't necessarily intend to do this, but I'm going to also drop the suicide hotline in the
Yeah.
description. I don't know if there's any kind of YouTube or Facebook prohibits that. I don't think so, but I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the description for anybody, but also um, post your content for um, your information so people
And
can.
actually, also, Tony, if they go to my TikTok profile, they can click on my picture, and then I've got a stand store.
Okay.
I'm putting together a Facebook group, and I've also got guides in there that can help people deal with different aspects of mental illness that they're going through. They're guidebooks, and then they also have a workbook along with them.
Okay.
So that's something that I'm doing to help people.
Well, guys, ladies and gents, this is again Cay Miner. She is, again, as I mentioned, on TikTok. Again, I'll put her contact information below. Just give me a little time to come back and make the edits. But this is Tony, the Tony C. Davis Show. I appreciate you all for joining. If you have some positive content to share, be it faith, family, fitness, finance, fun, or anything in between, reach out to me. We'd love to share your positive content with the world. You all, thank you for joining us, and you all have a blessed evening.